Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Honest HR Nitrous. I am Bill, the company's expert, and this is another episode of a weekly live stream where we talk about everything to do with employment, careers, business, jobs, all that kind of stuff, including getting hired. So that's resumes, interviews, networking, all that kind of stuff. And I try and make an effort to talk about, honestly, what actually goes on out there. Not just the party line, company line, the mantra that a lot of people in the recruitment industry repeat necessarily. We talk about the contradictions in this process, maybe some conflicting information you've heard about, and talk about some real issues. So, if you are wanting to discuss this, get in the chat. This is an interactive live stream. If you are seeing my face right now, you probably will see a chat box of some kind in the vicinity of my face, maybe below the video feed. And get in there. Let me know what you're wondering, what you're dealing with, what questions you might have, and I will do my best to help you out. The title of today's episode is You Feel Career Path Uncertainty. So we're going to be talking about careers, something I don't normally talk about, formalized careers, or for want of a steady, straightforward direction in your career. Some people go into very formalized careers where there's a very established career path, like a progression. Other people don't, and I am personally in the latter category. I have jumped around. I've worked across 5 different industries, 6, I guess, if you count YouTube. And I think that the expectation is that everybody should have a linear career path, but I think the reality for most people is that they don't, and this is okay. But for some reason, people feel that this is not good. I think the expectation is that you're supposed to have a very, traditional career, and it's supposed to progress in a certain way. And if that doesn't happen, people get upset and they question and they wonder. So if that's you, get in the chat. Let me know what you're dealing with. I see there's 14 people here. Thank you for joining me today. As always, I want to thank my YouTube channel members. You guys are awesome. And I want to thank my Super Thanks donors. You guys are just as awesome. And my Patreons and my participants. So thank you for being here. Listen, I have wanted to incorporate more live chat GPT stuff into my live stream simply because I'm trying to push ChatGPT. I think it's an incredible tool. I think that if you are not using it yet, you are at a bit of a disadvantage. So I'm going to do that. In fact, maybe just to kick us off, I really do not have an agenda or a plan for what to talk about today. I figured I would just respond to your questions. So hopefully people will get in the chat. I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. Here we go. Okay, let's kick this off for want of a starting point. Let's start with that. How about that? And we'll use what this thing says just as a sort of starting point. I'm going to see if I can zoom this in so we can read it a bit better. It's not just that I'm an old guy. It's that I want to make sure that if you're watching this on a phone or something, you can also see. So what I imagine is we've got here is just some very basic sort of common sense ideas, notions here. Feeling uncertain about your career path, it's common. Yes, it is. It is common. And, the other thing is that it depends what your definition of a career is. Somebody will define that different from somebody else. You could have had a collection of jobs in your life. Does that qualify as a career? Maybe if the jobs are all unrelated? I'll leave that up to you. Some people's definition is that that's not a career. A career is a series of jobs that build on each other, or a progression, right? Including maybe getting promoted and all this kind of stuff. not necessarily changing employers. Yeah, okay, all this self-introspection stuff, ask yourself what you want to do. This is something that I've always had a problem with. I don't know if you guys have had a problem with too, especially when I was younger. How are you supposed to know what you want to do if nobody will show you what the options are? That was the big question that formed in my mind when I was an impressionable youngster. If you don't know what's out there, how are you supposed to make an informed decision as to what you would want to do? That's the first thing. Secondly, if you know what you want to do, is that supremely important? Maybe the opportunities come to you from other directions. Maybe you want to be a lion tamer, but right now they're hiring accountants, and if you study to be an accountant or you take an accounting course, you could make a ton of money. So maybe you do that. You know what I mean? Like, would that be so bad? For some people, I'm sure the answer is yes. For other people, the answer is no. Personally, I've always felt, ironically, especially early on, that I didn't really mind the actual work I did, what industry you were in, and the nature of the work, as long as the people you worked with were tolerable. If you went to a place where the people were really nice, and you were fortunate enough to find a job where your coworkers and your boss was awesome, it didn't really matter what you did so much, what line of work you were in, if you felt appreciated and you were made welcome, and people stroked your ego and they felt like they enjoyed your company and it was easy to deal with people. You know what I mean? You go and you do the work that you're more interested in doing, but you find that the people there are insufferable and they make you feel like this, and you're coming home with stress, every day and all this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Excellent. We got somebody in the chat. WYBT. I vaguely remember that. Who says, what is the real intent behind common HR and hiring managers' behavioral questions? How to respond to questions that do not make a lot of sense to me, especially if I have been laid off. Excellent question. I like questions like this. Let's get into it. Okay, here's the deal. It doesn't make sense to you, probably, because you don't understand what they're trying to do. It makes perfect sense to them because they're operating on a principle known to them, which dictates that if I ask questions about a certain thing, that will reveal certain things about the candidate, right? So you're absolutely right. There's a lot of HR principles. Now, some of them are valid, and in my opinion, some of them aren't, because a lot of the principles that they assume are true, what I learned by being in university teaching this material to recruiters was that a lot of those principles, as far as I could tell, have not been peer-reviewed and demonstrated with evidence. They are theories that are yet unproven, okay? As you can imagine, in psychology, there's been many of those over the last 150 years, ever since Freud was around. They theorized a lot of things, and then they acted on it. But those theories were later disproven, right? Showing that their actions were largely ineffective, right? Now, personally, I believe that several of the theories they're currently using right now in recruitment and selection, principles, are similarly false because they are very unintuitive, and speaking personally, they directly contradict my observations of other people throughout my career. So now coming back to your question, okay, behavioral questions. They're asking you things like, tell me about a time you did this. Tell me about a time you dealt with conflict. Tell me about a time you dealt with a bad coworker. Tell me about a time you dealt with a challenge. Tell me about a time you showed creativity. Questions of that nature. Are they actually interested in learning your past? No, they don't really care directly about what you did working for some other employer. What their concern is how would you behave if they were to hire you for their job that they're currently looking to fill, right? So the principle they're going on there is that they've been taught, or at least if it's a recruiter, they've been formally taught this. Past behavior predicts future behavior. Okay, so if you were put in a situation in the past and you responded one way, the theory is that if you were to be placed in that same type of situation again, you would respond the same way. Now, already that's kind of a shaky principle. It is somewhat true, right? However, it sort of dismisses the concept that people can grow, people can learn, people can change their behavior, which contradicts the value they place in job experience, right? So if they ask you about a situation that you're not put in every day, maybe it comes up once every 2 years, and you talk about the last time you encountered that situation and what you did, it's not a sure thing that you would behave in exactly the same way again, right? So what they're really asking is they're really asking you in a roundabout way, what would you do if you found yourself in this situation? How would you respond, right? So you got to keep that in mind. You can't tell a story where you responded in a different way than what you would do today, right? If you were put in that situation again, okay? And some people try and fix this by, when they give an answer to a behavioral question, everybody knows that the traditional way you answer a behavioral question is you give an answer in the STAR format, right? Situation, task, action, result. All that is just a very compact way of telling your story so you don't ramble on for 5 minutes and you give them everything they're looking for. The thing that they really care about is the last two, like what you did, action, and how it turned out. What was the result? Okay, so that's what they're looking. They're looking for you to first of all, you've got to have an answer right on the top of your head. That's where preparation comes in. If you're kind of like, and then you're trying to think of something original while you got these people staring at you in a job interview, it's probably pretty hard. So preparation really matters. Then you have to tell a story where you act correctly, the way they would like you to act. Not necessarily how you might have acted before. A lot of times people learn things through trial and error. You're put in a situation on the job, it goes wrong. You since learn how you should have handled it, right? So anyway, that's the story you'd want to tell. Some people get around it by tacking on what they learned. So it would be the STARL format: situation, task, action, result, learning, right? You would say, this is what I did, this is how it turned out, but what I learned was, in the future, you should maybe do this first, and then you get a better result, and then they get around it like that. You could do that. I personally wouldn't. It overcomplicates things. I just tell the story as if it's what you would do, to be honest. Between you and me and the entire internet, that's what I would do. Don't let anyone know. Oh, excuse me. I still have got a lingering flu thing. Okay, but that's why they're asking those questions. Not because they care about what you did in some other job. It's because they're trying to figure out, do you understand the proper way of dealing with these different situations? That's what they're trying to figure out. Okay, so it really helps if you go to a job interview prepared. You have, what I recommend is you memorize 10 stories. Okay, and they're somewhat varied. 5 of them could be your most shining moments where you crushed it on the job. You did something and it turned out fantastic. You were commended, you were promoted, and then 5 other things where maybe you were dealing with tough situations. Usually people, like, a bad coworker or a bad boss, unclear instructions, where you failed, like you tried something and it did not go very well. How did you handle it? Things like that. And if you memorize those, so they're on the tip of your mind, okay? People don't like it when I say that. Somebody really took me to task and said, you have to say the forefront of your mind or the tip of your tongue. You can't say the tip of your mind. Yes, I know that. It's a play on words. Anyway, so if you've prepared those, whatever behavioral question they ask you, and there are literally millions of these, okay, you can't prepare for them all. That's the problem. There's so many variations they could ask you, including all kinds of crazy, exotic things you never considered. So if you, if you go to the job interview prepared with 10 of these, like where you've memorized them, you've practiced saying them in that compact format, STAR, so you don't ramble, you bang them off in like a minute, you can tell the entire story. And whatever they ask you, you're going to pull out one of those 10, the closest one that it kind of fits. And then you'll have an answer prepared. It'll be expressed in a very coherent, professional way. And you vetted your answers, so you know that you're not giving them any examples of the wrong way to handle things, right? And that way, whatever behavioral question they ask you, you're prepared for. That's how you do these things, okay? Sandy, so hopefully that's helpful. Now, especially if you've been laid off, that's what you said. Yeah, well, the only way I would see that coming up is if they asked you, not a behavioral question, but they asked you, why did you leave your last job? That's not a behavioral question. That's just, a traditional question. In which case, it's okay to say that you were laid off, especially if you were laid off with other people at the same time, because then that shows that there was nothing wrong with you. It was just, the company was downsizing, they had to cut staff, and I was the junior person. I was one of the junior people, so they let several of the junior people all go together, and it was a termination without cause, and that's what brings me here, kind of thing. So saying that is perfectly acceptable. It doesn't give away any red flags. So just so you know. Sandy says hello from Devon, England. Oh, right on. I was in England earlier this summer. I've got some family in Cumbria. So, yeah. Kyle says, really appreciate the great career and recruiting advice you give to us all. You're absolutely welcome. Thank you for all the added value you provide. Well, that's very kind of you, Kyle. Thank you very much for saying that. You have yourself an awesome day and an awesome weekend. Conch77 says, I've been stuck in my mid-manager position for 6 years. I've outgrown this position and there are no internal opportunities. I don't want to leave as this is a good company. Any advice? Well, listen, this is the problem. You don't have control over other people. You only have control over yourself. So if there just are no other opportunities with that company, that really limits what you can do. Obviously, if you want to be first in line, if anything does open up with that company, the more networking type stuff you can do with your bosses or the people, the decision makers at that company will help. Now, if you're an introvert and you don't know what I'm talking about, here's an example. Let's say occasionally your boss stops by your desk or something and says, hey, you want to go to lunch or something like that? A lot of introverts will be tempted to say, oh, no, thanks. I brought my lunch. I've got a brown bag lunch and I'm doing fine, or, whatever. First of all, you would want to say, yes, sure, let's do it. I don't care if you brought your lunch. Let it sit in the fridge or whatever and go for lunch with your boss. Even if you have to pay for your lunch, do it. Okay, because that's an example of more social interaction with your boss. You can discuss life, the universe, and everything. You can discuss work. You can, you know what I mean? You can discuss what your interests are outside of work and have a closer sort of relationship, And what that does is it allows them to think more positively about you. And the end result is that if there are any opportunities, they might want to consider you before they consider, sort of they put it up for canvas. So it can be a slimy, ingratiating thing if you are a slimy, ingratiating person, but that's usually not how it works. Usually if it's just, like not mean-spirited or anything, you're being genuine and you're wanting to actually get to know someone and shoot the shit, if I can say that, that's perfectly fine. But apart from stuff like that, there's really not much you can do if you don't want to leave and there's no opportunities there. I would always be looking, always be open-minded to looking elsewhere. You never know what there might be out there. Okay, so don't just close your mind to saying, this is a good position. There are no others. No employer is as good as this employer. Therefore, I will never look. Don't fall into that trap. You'd be amazed at the cornucopia of things that are out there, including many, many things of which you are not aware, that you never know could be your calling. I've learned that by doing it. Hopefully that helps. Kyle says, I'm aware you're a big proponent of networking. However, I don't always find it easy to find blah, 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 blah. Has anyone ever said to you, I know that you're into driving a car, but even though I'm a millionaire, I don't like cars. I think they're overrated. I prefer to walk everywhere. I don't understand why people are so obsessed with using cars. They don't seem that much more convenient to me, so I'm just going to stick with walking. What do you say to someone like that? That's how it feels to me, Kyle. A lot of times when I talk about certain things that are a hard sell, networking to young people is one of them, especially introverts. It's a hard sell because they are just opposed to the entire concept. Okay? Now, I thank my lucky stars that my eyes were open to this when I was in my 20s. Okay, because I myself assumed that it was an underhanded, unethical thing filled with slimy type, people ingratiating themselves to each other and doing favors for each other and all that. Like I was reacting to what I thought it was, not what it was. What it was is people talking to each other, Do you talk to your coworkers? Do you ever talk about stuff you do outside of work, or your interests or your ambitions, or how you do your respective jobs? Do you ever talk about that with your coworkers? Well, congratulations if you do, because that's networking. Now, what if you talk to someone in a different department about what they do, and they asked you, what do you do? And you explain what your job is. That's networking. You know what I mean? It's people talking to each other. So if someone says to me, oh, networking A is this unethical thing, B is impossible to do, C is not an option for someone like me, I would say you're wrong on all three. And what I suspect is you're reacting to what you imagine it is rather than what it actually is. Yes, it can be like if you get two slimy, worthless bastards talking to each other, yeah, it can be a very off-putting thing, yes. But if you get two decent, everyday Joes talking to each other, there's absolutely no harm in it. You know what I mean? So open your mind to the concept. If you're trying to do stuff on LinkedIn, whether it's what I recommend or other things, if it's not working for you or doesn't feel good for some reason, try other ways of doing it. You know what I mean? But the sooner you learn to use this resource in a way that works for you, the better it will go for you, and the more opportunities will come your way. That's all I'm saying. Kyle says, it kind of depends on how they have their LinkedIn profile filled in. How would you go around that? Go around what? Like they didn't fill in their fields in their LinkedIn profile? I don't know how I would go around that. If you can reach out to, like for example, let's say you're trying to reach out to a potential employer, right? They're right across the street from where you live, and you're a fully qualified doctor, and they employ doctors, okay? And you find on LinkedIn that there is an individual who has a profile who their title is senior administrator of that company. Like they run the company, or they have a high position in the company, or maybe they're in charge of the medical department where they employ doctors. Now that person might not have anything on their LinkedIn profile other than their name and that title, right? But if you can connect to them and you send them a message and say, hey, would I be able to meet with you and ask you a few questions about the profession in general, the medical profession? Would I be able to get your opinion on a couple of questions? You know what I mean? Like if you can send that message to them, I would do it. Now, if they don't respond, that's fine. If they say no, that's more exotic, but that's fine. if they say yes, great, go meet with them, you know? Like, it doesn't matter how much is there for you to do this, you know? If they're not on there at all, obviously you can't do it. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have control over other people. As long as they have that position, it makes sense. Now, if they don't even have their name or something, like, I don't understand that. There's people on LinkedIn that have a profile, so they want to be public, but yet they hide everything from the public and make it so the public can't contact them. I don't understand that. So I wouldn't know how to handle that. AJ Singh says, if I don't have the qualification for the job, but I have experience, should I apply for it? What should I write on the application form? Well, it depends what they've said they're looking for. If they say, you know, you must have a medical degree and you don't, but you've worked as an orderly for 25 years, I don't think that's going to cut it, right? If they've said something like, you know, we're looking for a forklift operator, and if you have a valid forklift license, you know, that will count in your favor, then obviously you would apply, right? So it really depends what they're doing. Now, if it's a very desirable job, you want the job, I would apply anyway. And don't falsify anything, but, you know, obviously the general rule is you talk up your strengths and you play down your weaknesses. So I would make sure that you obviously put your experience front and center and talk about how much experience you have operating forklifts and the different types of forklifts, and, you know, what challenging situations, you know, you've used a forklift in, like using, you know, it to deal with hazardous materials or something, you know, right? Like, in a nutshell, that's what I would do. That's obviously a very complicated question that has a lot of detail in its answer that I can't go into, but that's the general approach. Sandy Black says, do you have to be mindful of your social media Facebook as potential employers may delve into this? Well, I suspect you know the answer to that, Sandy. The answer is yes. It depends what you have on there. If you have a bunch of incriminating stuff, like where your Facebook profile photo is like you absolutely hammered with like a bottle of whiskey in your hand, and, you know, you're engaged in some questionable activities that may be borderline illegal in several countries, then that would probably not be a good thing for people to be able to find, right? So, yes, you do have to be mindful of that. Now, what I've heard is that employers are very diligent about searching for that stuff. I've heard people say that many times. I've never actually witnessed that myself, but that doesn't necessarily mean much. They say, a lot of different sources say that a lot of employers go out and actively research that. I have done that a little bit. I have just run a Google search on some candidates that, you know, if I was considering hiring them or they were the final three, I would do like a quick Google search, see what comes up. You know, yeah, so just, you know, do the right thing. Maybe don't use your full name or, you know, like uniquely identifying things in your Facebook profile if you've got weird stuff on there, or just take the weird stuff off, right? You have kind of two choices there. Either make it so people can't find it, or just remove it altogether as much as you can, you know? Right? Beyond that, I'm really not an expert in that. I know that there's questions of like, what if there's something really incriminating out there and I don't have the power to remove it? Then what do I do? I know there's questions like that. I'm not an expert in that kind of stuff. So I would talk to people who specialize in that. WYBT says, talking to Conch. Global product and gaming review. How does it feel to be rich? Who's that directed at? Conch 70. Okay, people are talking amongst themselves. Veronica and Dale Albers says, question, is an online portfolio or website a must-have these days for non-design graphic folks? No. I don't believe so. I mean, I have one of those. I've had one of those for like 15 years, and it's not nearly as useful as people say. At least that's what I found. You know, people will go to your social media sites if you have a LinkedIn page or, you know, maybe a Facebook page. But so I've seen that, but, you know, everyone ignores always ignored my personal websites. That's just my experience. I don't know if that's universal, but that's what I've said. So I don't think it's essential. I mean, maybe it's a help, but I wouldn't count on people going there. My experience was all, you had to try and send people there, and it wasn't easy because they wouldn't do it on their own accord, So that's my opinion on that. But it depends. I mean, if you're some kind of like high level professional, that has a lot of unique skills and, there's a lot of detail involved, maybe videos, photos, whatever. You need that to sell yourself if that's like a thing in what you're doing. Like, for example, in the world of public speaking, a lot of public speakers will have a personal website. They'll have videos of them doing public speaking. They'll have all kinds of information about the topics they cover and the approach and, and all this. And that's a common thing if you're in that business. But if you're not in that business, if you're just in you're just an accountant or an engineer or a technician or a customer service rep, it's not a common thing in my experience. AJ Singh says, what? Achieved a level 4, some qualification or the ability to achieve this within 2 years. If I don't have qualification for a job but have experience, should I apply for it? Okay, I missed that one earlier, I think. If I don't have the qualification for the job, oh yeah, okay, no, I did mention that. Okay, that was the thing I was talking about, forklifts. Don't use acronyms, like just as a general rule. I don't know where in the world you are, and I don't know what industry you're in, so don't just fire an acronym at me. I have no idea what it means. I have no idea what level 4 HLTA qualification means. Well, if it says the ability to achieve it within 2 years, that's saying it's not required, right? So there you go. It's not required. It's a nice to have. So apply. Like if you feel that, you have what they're looking for, apply. What's the harm in applying? Company's expert, how does it feel to be rich? Oh, it feels fantastic. I don't consider myself rich, but there you go. Sandy Black, I'm an angel on social media. Thank you. Good. Nothing to worry about. Pearl, hi Bill, with regards to career paths, should one go for the more financially rewarding or a career one? What? Or a career one is more passionate about? Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, that's a question of life choices. I don't think I can really advise you on that. But that's a common thing, right? You often have kind of a thing you'd like to do, something very glamorous, something very fun, right? But the opportunities are in areas usually not connected with those things because they're highly desirable, so you have a lot of competition, right? I can't answer that for you, obviously. You would have to evaluate both. Now, it is possible to succeed in areas where they're highly desirable, there's a lot of competition, they're very glamorous, or they're very fun, but you should be aware that the odds are, in most cases, are that you won't, right? Because it's like everyone and their brothers would love to do that, right? Like being a movie star or something, you know what I mean? However, it might make more sense to go in a direction where, they have a lot of high paying jobs. It might not be as glamorous, but you could do it. And the odds are in your favor that you might be able to pull it off. So, you know what I mean? That's for everyone to decide on their own. But obviously the traditional way to handle that was to shoot for, have like a stretch goal, shoot for your ambition, but have something to fall back on, have something, you sort of hedge your bets, right? So there you go. Okay, well, we seem to have reached the end of the end of the feed. So get in the feed if you have any questions. Yeah, I'm going to continue with this. If you weren't here at the beginning, what I did is a starting point for this, and consistent with my wanting to promote ChatGPT is I just sort of plugged in career path uncertainty to ChatGPT just to see what stuff it spat out at me. And we got this, basic common sense stuff, assess your skills. Yeah, I mean, crap that everybody's done, Explore career options. Yeah, easier said than done. This is the problem, okay? Now, what I would recommend, what I want to say about this is what I'd recommend for people is this is where informational interviews are extremely valuable. Like, for example, let's say you're young and you're thinking about, I don't know, maybe becoming a doctor or something. Maybe it's between doctor or, I don't know, what else you would do, architect, okay? Well, wouldn't it be useful if you could sit down with a couple of doctors in your hometown that, were relatively close to where you live, and, you had maybe half an hour or an hour to just ask some questions, say like, how does this work? How does this profession work? What was your career path? Why did you decide to become a doctor? How did you find it? Did it go the way you were expecting? What you've achieved, is that kind of typical? Or, like questions like this, and then do the same thing with maybe say 2 architects in your hometown. And then what that does is it gives you sort of some information that is from a different perspective, because maybe the only information you've gotten about these professions are from the schools that are trying to sell you education for you to go and study there for that profession. So there's a conflict of interest. They'll tell you things like, oh yeah, there's always demand for doctors, and every doctor gets paid $1 million, so come and study at our school and be a doctor. They've got a vested interest. They're trying to sell their education product to you. So you might want to validate those claims and go talk to some doctors. And if you talk to a doctor and say, what would you recommend to young people? And the doctor says, oh, don't go into this today because it's tough and there's hardly any jobs in that here. Or if you do go in that type of medicine or whatever, expect to have to move halfway around the world to get a job or, whatever. Like, they might be able to give you that kind of real insight. So it can be very useful if you do that to get insight into this. Global product and gaming review. I don't know if I want to really answer any of your questions after the whole Rich comment. TTC, resignation during annual leave. Does it mean would still have to give the minimum policy resignation notice period? Resignation during annual leave, does it mean you would still have to give it? Look, I don't know in what country you're even in. So what you would do is you'd look up the local laws on that. Go to Google and do a search for the local labor laws. You could either type in labor laws and then your city, or you could type in something like employment standards and then your city or your region, wherever, if those are at the federal level or, a sort of state or provincial level or a municipal level, usually at the state level or provincial level, that's kind of where those laws usually are. So do a search for it, or you could ask ChatGPT as a starting point. I wouldn't rely on it, but you could say like, what do they call the laws for, governing labor practices in this region? And then once you know what they're called, you can do a Google search for that. In most countries, they actually have that stuff printed online, so you can go and read the actual law. So here, I will actually see if I can demonstrate that for you right here. And this goes to anyone who's wondering anything like this. If I can just get a Google prompt here. Okay, here we go. Let's see if I can do this here. Okay, so now I happen to know what the labor laws are where I am. So I would say employment standards. Like, look, I mean, it's already even auto-filling it for me. And this is like a, incognito window kind of thing. So employment standards, Manitoba. So this, I live in Canada and I live in the region of Canada called Manitoba. It's a province. It's not called a state. It's a province. And so But you can do this wherever you are in the world. Now, the first thing you get is this is the website of the branch of the government who are like the police for employment laws, right? So if your boss, say, tells you you must come to work and you don't get a break for 10 hours, and, no, you must do what I say or I fire you, like that would, in most countries, that's against the law. You need to give people a break after a certain amount of time. So these guys are like the police for that. Okay, so this is where you contact them. You can call that number and you could ask them a question. You could say like, hey, I'm not going to tell you my name. I'm not going to tell you my employer, but I got a question. My employer said this to me. Is that okay? And they'll say, no, that breaches this law and you have the right to take a break after 5 hours. And this is how you would handle it. Now, if you want us to get involved, we're happy to get involved, but things like this, right? So those are the people. Now, that's not really what you're looking for. You're looking for the actual laws. And like I know what it is, but you would have to search around a little bit to get this. So I know it's called an act, right? So employment standard. So this is this it right here? No, it's not a PDF I want. Actually, this is the law, but they have it on the web. So what you could do is, was it the first thing? What was that? No. Was it this? No. Was it this? This is some other thing. But it's very similar to this. Okay, why accept all cookies? Don't you hate having to do that? Anyway, it's something like this. So here's the actual laws. So what you can do, right, is you can say Control F, find, and then what were you asking about? You were asking about notice period. So I'll type in notice period. Okay, so there's 14. Okay, here we go. So termination by employer notice period. Now here you go. This is the law right here. So for Manitoba, right, where I am, so period of employment, if you've been employed less than 1 year, you have to give 1 week's notice. If you're, as it says here, at least 1 year but less than 3 years, you have to give 2 weeks. And if you've been at least 10 years you've been employed there, you got to give 8 weeks. So, you'll have your equivalent of this in your country, in your region, right? So there you go. There's your answer right there. And if you're asking about like being on sabbatical or leave of absence or whatever, you do another search, leave of absence, and then you see what it says there. And if there's, or it mentions notice period on leave of absence. So you can do these kinds of searches and then exactly what the law says and what it applies to you in your region. Okay. So this is kind of empowering for a lot of employees. Like, exactly what the rules are for your employer. And you also know who to call if your company is refusing to abide by those rules, right? You can do it anonymously. You don't have to identify yourself. You could just say, hey, these people are doing this. And maybe the police will call that company and say, hey, we've had a report that you're doing this. What's going on there? And then if the police want to, they can come down. Now, where I am, I won't go on about this forever, but I'll just say where I am, the government is pretty powerful for stuff like that. They have the power to shut down any and all companies that are violating this, and they don't have a problem with doing that either if they have to. So, depending where you are in the world, that may be the case or it may not be, but at least you know what the law is. Okay, how do you say this? Aniruddha says, hi, Bill. Hope you're doing well. Stay blessed. Thank you. Thank you very much, Aniruddha. That's very nice of you to say. I'm doing fine. Davey says, hey, Bill. And Davey spelled my name with a lowercase b. Davey says, I had a company in interviewing with contact my current employer. Whoa. And I didn't put references down. Is that normal? I had a company in interviewing with contact my current employer. Sorry, Davey, you kind of lost me on the grammar there. If you could make your sentences shorter and one idea per sentence, then even if you use imperfect grammar, it can still be usually understood, no problem. I didn't want my current job to know if I was interviewing till I got an offer. Okay, so here's the deal. I guess it's too late for you, Davey, because this has already happened. But if you really don't want your, like if you're working at a place and you're simultaneously looking for jobs, and you don't want any job you apply to, you don't want them to contact your current employer, because that would tip off your current employer that you're looking for another job. So if you don't want that to happen, the obvious thing to do is to not put precise information about your current employer. Don't say like, you can maybe say the company, but don't say like what the name of your boss is or give them your boss's contact information, Now, usually what happens is companies will ask, they'll say, do we have permission to contact your previous employer? Okay. Some incompetent or underhanded or just bad employers, I guess, might just go ahead and take it upon themselves to contact your current employer anyway. I don't see that a lot, but I guess maybe that's what happened to you, Davey. You know what I mean? So the best thing to do is just not share. Like, don't give your current boss as a reference. So then makes it very hard for them to contact your current boss. You know what I mean? In this day and age, people don't need to phone a company. They can just go look at a link. They can look at LinkedIn or something, and they can see that you work there, right? Okay, so I don't know what to say. It's like, it's not normal for them to just go ahead and do that, especially when you haven't given them permission to do it because of this issue, because people know that in most cases, employees don't want it known. They don't want their boss tipped off that they're looking for other jobs, right? So this is usually understood by most recruiters and hiring managers, If it's a really underhanded company, it could be an intentional tactic to try and put pressure on you to accept an offer or something. They're going to sabotage your current job. You know what I mean? That's the only thing I can think of. Either that or they're just that stupid. I don't know. But no, it's not normal. And this is precisely the reason why people don't do it. So hopefully that makes sense. We're once again at the end of the chat, so if you do have any questions, get in the chat and ask me. Other than that, that's pretty much all I have to go on at this point. I'm going to go back to my handy dandy little chat GPT session here. So for career gaps, career path uncertainty, this is what it says. Now you got to take everything chat GPT says with a grain of salt. It's an incredibly useful tool, but it does get some things wrong, like it says. Okay. Experiment on test. Yeah. Define success for yourself. Yeah. I find a lot of these completely unhelpful, to be honest. But the bottom line is for career paths, some professions have a very formalized standard career path where you first do this for a certain period of time. Then the natural progression is you then move on to do this. And then you then move on to do this, right? Doctors are like that. Lawyers are like that. Accountants are like that. A lot of jobs that are highly regulated, the professions that are highly regulated, there tends to be a very standard career path. Most other things, there really isn't a standard career path, because the reality is that most other jobs, how can I put this without being insulting? They're not rocket science. You know what I mean? It is possible to move sideways. It is possible to, sort of jump industries and change careers. A lot of people do this, right? Maybe you spent 15 years in the oil and gas industry, and maybe you progressed within that industry, but then you decided to leave that entire industry. That's normal. You do get a lot of people doing that kind of thing, and a lot of other people that are forced to do that kind of thing as industries experience sort of boom and bust cycles, right? One year they're hiring as many people as they can get. The next year they're laying everybody off, right? Some industries are like that. Every industry goes through that cycle to a degree, but some industries swing widely more than others, right? Some industries are more or less stable. An example would be jobs in the government, for example. That's one of the most stable kind of industries you can work in. I worked in the railroad for many years. That was relatively stable. The railroad has been around for 100 years. It's probably going to be around for another 100 years. It's relatively stable. But as we've seen lately, things like IT and stuff, if they're hiring developers, you get these huge boom bust cycles. Oil and gas, huge boom bust cycles, So if you're in those professions, you might be forced to you're out, you're laid off. And it's not like a seasonal or cyclical thing either. So you have to change careers to keep making money. Right? And what I'm trying to say is that that's normal, and there are ways to do this. However, what everyone should be aware of is that when you're changing careers, usually you can't really do that by going through recruiters. There are exceptions, but the general rule is you can't, because recruiters, the number one metric they use for everything is years of experience. How many years of experience do you have? Right? Now, if you're changing careers, by definition, you have 0 years of experience in the job you're going to, right? So the way they appraise people, that sort of instantly disqualifies anyone who's never done it before, right? And we all know that that's crap. People can do stuff they've never done before. Of course they can. So usually you change careers by talking to hiring managers, right? The person that ends up being your boss. That's usually how you do it. And that's where more of like networking and stuff like that comes into play. Where did I leave off here? Bob says, I never put my current employer on LinkedIn. Okay. I think you're in a minority there, Bob, but it makes sense. It certainly really reduces the ability for a company you're applying to contact your current employer. You greatly reduce that risk. So that's one good aspect of that. Davey says, it does. I have an all-day in-person interview with this company next week, and they're paying for flight and hotel. I imagine they're digging info on me beforehand. Yeah, but still, it doesn't justify them contacting if they contacted your current boss, if that's what they did. To me, that's crossing the line. That's unprofessional behavior, because everyone knows that when you contact someone's current employer, you're basically signaling to them that you are looking for other jobs, right? It's pretty obvious. So usually we don't see that, regardless of, whether they're flying you around or whatever, you know what I mean? Yeah, they want to do research on you, but that's not the way. You know what I'm saying? You're welcome, Davey. Bob says, I update LinkedIn with my current employer when it becomes my previous employer. Sure. That's one way to do it. Nothing wrong with that. It does give up some advantages of you being connected with your current employer. I don't really agree with certain practices that recruiters do, but another kind of thing that recruiters do is that if you are not currently employed, recruiters look at you unfavorably, because this is another one of those principles that, as far as I've been made aware, have not actually been proven in a peer-reviewed sense with research and independent research. They associate people that are unemployed with being risky. And as far as I can tell, the logic is that if no one is hiring you, or you are out of a job, there could be a reason for that. We might never be able to discover what that reason is, because you could just lie about it and we wouldn't be able to uncover it. But it suggests a higher likelihood that, there could be something wrong with you that would make you someone who doesn't work out if we were to hire you. So that's another one of these principles. It's stupid, but it is true for some recruiters. They do operate on that principle. So if you are on LinkedIn and you don't have a current employer, to me, that suggests you're either saying your previous employer is your current employer, or you're saying you're currently unemployed, right? If you look at the dates. So, there's disadvantages with both of those. But hey, they might be minor compared with what you're trying to achieve here, which is, reducing the risk that anybody could sabotage your current job. I get it. TTC, what would you constitute as good reference from the HR point of view if you do not want to give contacts in the current work of employment? It's still possible to give good references. Just because you don't include your current boss doesn't mean you can't give them references they would consider to be good. Listen, references are not all they're cracked up to be. Everybody knows that it is possible to fake references. You can give them like 3 references. You could say this person is your current boss. You can give them a phone number. Really what you've done is you've given them a phone number of a friend or something. They call that number. The friend pretends to be your current boss, says, oh yeah, I've employed them this many years and they're great. You know what I mean? Like, it is possible to fake those. So references are a lot of times are kind of a formality. They still do them as part of their due diligence, but it isn't this thing that like is an absolute guarantee that you're legit. And they know that. So what you can do is you can give them current coworkers if you're comfortable with that. If you've spoken with your current coworkers and said, look, on the down low, I'm looking for another job. Is it okay if I use you as a reference? Would you be able to give me a good reference? Would you be able to keep your mouth shut about this? Can I rely on you? Stuff like you could give them a current coworker, or everything could just be old. It could be previous bosses, previous coworkers, or personal references, people that know you from outside of work. Maybe someone that is a college professor or something, someone of repute, or they're like a high-powered lawyer or a doctor, someone that, they could, in theory, you could verify that these people are who they say they are. And if they say, oh yeah, I've known that person for 20 years and they're awesome, they always do what they say they're going to do, they have integrity and I trust them and I would recommend them for anything. That does carry some weight. So you can give all of those as alternatives to people at your current employer. And they will be regarded as acceptable in the vast majority of situations. Bob says references can come from folks that you have worked with before. Yeah, exactly. Awesome. There are 18 people here. Once again, we've reached the end of the chat. So get in the chat. Let me know what you're wondering, what you're struggling with, and I'll be happy to help you out. This is what ChatGPT says about career paths and career path uncertainty. It just gives some BS advice. It's stuff that's so general as to be almost useless, in my opinion. But but that's the reality. Like, not all professions or occupations have a standardized career path. And just because your career doesn't follow like a standardized path is not necessarily bad, depending on what you're doing. My career didn't follow a standardized path. I jumped industry several times, and it is possible to do. And I do recommend it. There's something to be said for specialized skills. If you've worked in one area for 25 years or something, obviously there's some advantages in that. Your stuff, you go deep. But there are also advantages in jumping around a bit. You get to see so much more. You get to see different ways of doing things. And then you get to bring those different sort of solutions you've seen in different situations into your arsenal of stuff you're capable of doing. I've taken advantage of that. I recommend other people do that. A lot of the faults with some companies and things, why they're doing things wrong, is because they're so insular. They haven't ever stepped outside of their industry to see how people in other industries are handling some of those issues. And if they had, they would have found that some of those problems and issues have been completely solved in other industries, right? But they themselves are ignorant of it in this sort of industry that's a bit of a walled garden, you know? TTC says, what are your thoughts about the employee of the month? You mean like when they have like you go to a fast food restaurant, they have the photo up on the wall, like the portrait of somebody? Are there any ways that can be used when looking for employment? Oh, like as a way of saying, you know, like putting it on your resume or something. Employee of the month certificates. I mean, what do I think of it? I mean, hey, it's an accomplishment, you know. Now, whether the people that you're sending your application to regard it as like a big deal or not, that's going to vary. But it doesn't hurt to put it on there. Do I think it will be the be all end all? No, but it certainly can't hurt, you know. So yeah, put it on there, especially if you have space. You haven't already got a 3-page resume or something, you know. Definitely. Any kind of thing like that that's a feather in your cap, I would consider putting it on your resume, unless there's a risk of it diluting a whole bunch of other things that they specifically asked for, and the stuff that they specifically asked for is already taking up a lot of space, you know? Bob says, I haven't either. I worked in one place where it was kind of a joke. Like they did it for fun, but I also know that you know, some silly management flavor of the month kind of trends, at least like 10 to 20 years ago, encouraged that kind of stuff. Like these really lame sort of initiatives where they're trying to raise morale and they're trying to foster a sense of, you know, team spirit and all this kind of stuff. They encourage, you know, little friendly competitions and that kind of stuff. I always strongly dislike that stuff. It appeals to people that are like extroverts. It appeals to people that are into sports and they're competitive and they like that kind of thing. But it doesn't appeal to anyone else. That's the problem. You know, and if employee of the month, if it's just an empty thing, it's empty, you know. Now, if it came with like $1,000 cash prize or something, then maybe people might care about it more, you know. Or if there were actual privileges, you've earned the right to, you know, you get taken on the next business trip, or whatever. Like there's some actual reward, or you get a raise or something like that. You know what I mean? Then it would hold some water. You know what I mean? I was always a fan of just little cash bonuses, like $100 bonus this week, you know, for like, if you can do this, you know, you go above and beyond, you do this little thing, you know, because I asked for it. I was in favor of those because I observed people that make, like, this was a while ago, but they were making 6 figures. They're making over $100,000 Canadian. And, but yet they were still unmotivated. But then you say, okay, well, if you can get this, if you can accomplish this goal by the end of the week, you get an extra $100. All of a sudden, these people that are unmotivated are like, you know, working really diligently that entire week to make that goal. You know, so they got the little extra $100. You know, it's totally out of all proportion. So like, that's the stuff that I kind of favored, not these kind of empty sort of status things like employee of the month or stupid little competitions. I found that most people don't respond very well to those, you know, but that was just me. But if you've got it as an accomplishment, put it on your resume. It absolutely doesn't hurt. Bob says, yeah, employee of the month sounds like fast food. Yeah, that's the first thing that formed in my mind too. Pure Heart Ukulele Club. I like your handle. That's awesome. If you can uke a mean lele, that's always a good thing. Why don't you talk about United Healthcare and the assassination of the CEO? Why don't I? Because that's not what I do. And hello, I'm in a different country. Okay? So yeah, that's why I don't talk about it. Also, I'm trying to help people, not report on the news. Bob says, one place I worked had the Bonehead Award. The Bonehead Award. Oh, awesome. Was that like a really highly desirable thing? Do you get like a crown or something? A T connector with 2 resistance terminals on the end of the T connector. Oh. Yeah. It's an electrical joke. So all you people that aren't electrical, just be assured that it's just effing funny. Yeah, I mean, that stuff is good for fun. It's good to have a sense of humor. It really helps, and it's good that they did that kind of stuff. But like when they take it seriously and, they expect to motivate people with this stupid crap, I think it's insulting more than anything else. But what can you do? Jay Bink says, I'm experiencing rejection and ghost job fatigue. A full year of searching now and only 1 to 2 offers, both of which I had to reject. Hundreds of applications, 0 responses. I'm demoralized. Sorry to hear that, Jay. Listen, Jay. Okay, here's what you need to know. Okay, first of all, you kick ass. Okay, you're doing great. Like, you are a highly employable person. Okay, I can just tell by this small paragraph you've written here that you're an upstanding person. You can form sentences. You can, you know what I mean. You can express intelligent ideas. And here's what I'd have to say, going a bit further. Okay. Listen, there are more ways to get a job than simply applying for online applications. Maybe you know this already, but just in case you don't, applying for internet jobs is actually one of the worst methods to get a job. Okay, now, if any of this sounds fishy to you, like I always say, don't take my word for it. Go out and research this stuff, and you'll see for yourself. Most people do not get hired by applying for internet jobs and sending in applications. Okay, the most common way of getting a job is through some form of networking. Once again, don't take my word for this if this is new. Okay, go and do your own research on. That's what I'm trying to get you to do. Okay, that's if you ask, employees across the board, every industry, every country, how did you get hired for this job that you're in now? The most common answer is going to be some form of networking. I knew it was an ex-coworker that I knew that ended up coming here, and I reached out to them, and they were able to assist me in getting this position. They didn't get me hired, but they put in a good word for me and made them consider me, that kind of thing. Okay. Or a lot of people, they reach out to companies that are likely to employ someone like them. Okay. That's also a thing. The beauty about, living right now in the internet age is that you can do all of this online. You don't have to talk to anyone on the phone or anything like that. So if you're more of an introverted type, that kind of stuff is, you're fearful of, calling people on the phone or whatever. You don't have to do any of that. So look into that stuff. Okay. Because especially now with the rise of a lot of ghost jobs, okay, it's getting hired with posted internet jobs is an even worse option. It's even less likely to work out in the short term. Okay. Doesn't mean it doesn't work. It still does work. But you see, what you're seeing out there, first of all those jobs that you see posted, those are about 20% of all the jobs that are actually out there. The other 80% of jobs are hidden. That means they're not posted publicly. They exist and you could get them, but you will not find them listed on a job board like Indeed. Okay. The reason why they're not listed is because they don't need to list them. They are highly desirable jobs. The moment a boss mentions it even to their team of employees, the next day, the team of employees starts coming to talk to the boss one-on-one to say, hey, I've got a brother or a cousin or a friend that would be a good candidate for that job, right? So being presented with that kind of reaction, why would the boss then spend a ton of money and time to also try and get 1,000 strangers to apply for the job, right? When you've got personal recommendations from people that they know and trust and work with every day, this person would be good. You should check them out. I'll tell them to apply. Can we set up a meeting? That kind of thing. right? You don't need to advertise those jobs, right? They're not having trouble finding people to fill them. Okay. So, like the exceptions are things like government, but the vast majority of jobs are not in government. Okay. So that's a reality. Now, once again, I'm not encouraging you to take my word for any of this. Go and look this up, learn about it, learn how you access those jobs. So the idea is that if you reach out to companies and things and say, hey, I'm fully qualified in this, I'd love to work for you guys. If ever you're looking, let me know. I'd love to work for you. Now, most playing the law of averages, most people right now are not looking, but some of them are. And if you do this, you could easily do that to 100 people a day. Just like you can apply for like 100 jobs in a day, not a problem. You could send that message, that template message to 100 people in a day, right? And 5 of them will be looking for someone like you right now, right? So like it's things like this. That's how you access those other jobs, okay? There are other ways of getting jobs besides that, a lot of other ways. So don't just limit your job search campaign to doing this one activity, okay? There are a lot of other ways to get hired. Check out some of the others, learn what they are, and pursue those. Get your information from a variety of sources and make sure that it's not just from people that have a conflict of interest like recruiters. It's hard for a recruiter to say, don't go through a recruiter to get a job. You know what I mean? Certainly they are there to help, and some of them are good, but just keep that in mind. You can get hired without going through a recruiter. I'm sure you might know examples of family members that might have gotten hired without like applying formally for a job, and they talked to the boss and the boss hired them, so pursue all that stuff. Okay. Don't just do the same thing. If it's already been a year and it's not going anywhere fast, there's a lot of other things out there. Pursue those and do them in parallel with what you're already doing, and you increase your chances. Pure Heart Ukulele Club says, do not put employee of the month on your resume. Never. Okay. I don't understand the logic of that. Michael Pohl says, what are your thoughts about companies that pretend that they care about their employees' career path, but instead just take control of their career path without listening to the employee's wishes? Why would a company care about your career path if it involves you being outside of their company? Like, hello? Why would you believe them when they say, we care about you, right? They care about you in as much as that you're an employee, right? They don't want you to leave. They don't want you to, be negatively affected by anything in as much as it prevents you from being a good employee. So they care about your well-being to that degree. But beyond that, do they care about you independent of your work for them? No. Now, individuals in a company might, just because they're human beings, they might not want you to come to any harm. They might want you to prosper. They might be able to recognize that, like, okay, officially, I don't really care what you do, and I don't want you to leave if you're a good employee. But unofficially, just as a human being, as your friend, I want you to succeed and prosper. And if you have an amazing job opportunity that's much better than working here, as your friend, I would want you to take it, right? But officially, the company doesn't want you to leave, and they don't care about you as a person. So yeah, like you know what I mean? This is the kind of stuff I'm amazed that people are not taught when they're young, like we're talking high school or even earlier. Like, so the problem is you get out and you get your first career job and you get brainwashed by some large enterprise that makes you believe that, like all this propaganda. They tell you, oh yeah, you're the absolute best employee and you're working with the absolute best company. You believe that like an idiot. Then, when they say we care about you and we want you to succeed in your career just as much as you do, right? In the same way that you do, you, like an idiot, would believe that. You know what I'm saying? This stuff works. I've seen a lot of young people get brainwashed by this stuff, people that were never taught any kind of critical thinking skills and they don't understand incentives, like, hello, these people obviously have a conflict of interest, right? So yeah, of course they don't care about you. And that's why you have to do the right thing for you. Look out for number one. If your interests, if what's best for you aligns with what's best for the company, then yeah, that's perfect. And the purpose of a lot of executive compensation is to get people's personal incentives to align with the company's incentives. That way it all works out. These people want to do the right thing for the company, and they will get rewarded for it. But for some reason, that's not really considered below the executive level, to a ridiculous degree, And part of the reason is because a lot of people don't have critical thinking skills. They just believe propaganda when they're told it. And in some cases, that's all companies have to do to motivate you, to make you want to stay to work for an employer where you could get a better job across the street. I've been on, I don't want to say I've been on both sides of that because I haven't tried to convince anyone of that. The goal should, as a manager, should be to align your employees and your subordinates, their interests with the company goals. So you reward them for doing the things that the company wants them to do. And it works out for them and the company. That's what you want. But so many people aren't tuned into this. I could go on. I'm obviously starting to go on a rant about this, but you get the idea. That would be an interesting topic for an entire live stream, to be honest with you, TTC. That's a great topic. It's food for thought. But once again, I don't know if it would be a tough sell. I think a lot of people just, if you're stuck in believing this nonsense, you don't realize that you're being lied to, and therefore you wouldn't really be tuned into it. Okay, where did I leave off here? Okay, this thing, there's been a lot of posts in the last couple minutes here. Let's see here. There's been a lot of posts. I'm going back quite a ways here. Okay. Pure Heart Ukulele Club. I play all string instruments. Good. That is the topic of the day, and it impacts corporations and the way we think about them. I did realize you are Canadian. Cool. Yeah. How's it going, eh? Yeah. All the Canadian stuff. What was it? I live in an igloo. I take the dog sled to work. I dress up like the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and I eat maple syrup. I think it's as Canadian as apple pie, right? Which we invented. Probably around the same time we burnt down the White House, I think. Anyway, as I drive away my entire audience. Bob says, one would get the Bonehead Award if one did something boneheaded at work. Okay, so that's that's celebrated is what you're saying. Okay, good. Hey, that might be a fun place to work. Hopefully not boneheaded up to the point where it causes fatalities. Hopefully. Ukulele Club. When applying for jobs, break all the rules. Well, it depends. You see, that's an interesting point, Ukulele Club. If you are trying to impress yourself with the establishment, usually the way is not to break all the rules, because they respect the rules. They wrote the rules. They're not going to thank you for totally disregarding them. They want you to follow the rules. They want to put everyone on a level playing field, all 1,000 applicants, and they want to consider them side by side, right? That's their process. They don't like it when you bypass that, you try and hack it and get around that, But hiring managers who don't write the rules, they're not in the HR department. You can go around the HR department and talk to them directly, and they, a lot of times, not always, but certainly sometimes, they will definitely appreciate your initiative and your resourcefulness of being able to present yourself in a very favorable light and outmaneuver all your competitors. They regard that as a good thing in itself. Bob says, employee of the month may carry some weight in non-Western countries, perhaps, or fast food joints, yeah. Robert Rath says, you talked earlier about certain professions having wild economic swings. I'm in such a situation, very specific profession, and a multi-year downturn in my country. What usually happens to those people who become unemployed for several years? If we live by Murphy's Law, then we may not be the best idea. Okay, so, it goes on even more. Chasing into another profession that seemingly is doing well, but may enter its own downturn. Listen, look, obviously your personal situation is going to vary. I don't know what your personal situation is, but if you're talking about big economic ideas, like every industry has like a boom bust cycle. Now, when all those align together, that's when you get a recession, right? Right. But normally they're kind of going like this, all at different periods and different amplitudes. And, it's all just in there. Right. So if your industry is in a downswing, like a bit of a nadir, another industry might be having a boom at the same time, and they might be in your geographic region. Right. So if the oil refinery is laying off, maybe the copper mine is hiring as many people as they possibly can. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how these things kind of go. So I know that some people, they accept a certain amount of seasonal unemployment. They say, I'm not jumping industries. I'm going to stay in my industry. And I accept the fact that they've laid off people as part of maybe a cycle. But in this industry, those cycles are very predictable. They're very periodic. They always come around, and you don't have to wait that long. In 3 months, they'll be hiring again, right? And maybe it's even formalized. They have a seniority system, and they have people they send home, and then they call again as they start hiring and building up their workforce again. Companies like that, because they don't want to hire absolutely green people when they hire. They'd like to hire veterans, people that like on day one, you can do your job and there's no learning curve, right? So in some industries, they have that set up in a very formal way. Other industries, they don't. They don't have a clue of what's going on, or they're not even aware it's a cycle. So what you can do is you can hedge your bets. You can sort of keep looking for stuff within your industry, but also look outside of it. And whatever opportunities come your way, you just take the first thing that shows up. And just because you take something doesn't mean that you can't dump it when something else better comes along, right? So I would keep looking everywhere. I'd entertain every opportunity if you're out of a job. You know what I mean? That would be my recommended approach. But then again, I don't know your specific situation. So these are just very general principles. TDC, what are your thoughts about alleged misuse of company resources investigations done during employment while they only have speculative info? Does that have anything to do with career path uncertainty? I don't know. I don't really care. Sorry, TTC. Obviously, misusing company resources is bad. I think you know that, right? If it's something that you've done, but it's not provable, I don't know. Why? Is somebody taking you to court over this? I'm not sure. It doesn't enter into what we're here to talk about today. Sorry. Pure Heart Ukulele Club. An employer will only ever hire one additional employee. Is at the moment the lack of that employees begin to cost the company money. Sorry, you lost me. Depends on the company. Many are required to post their job vacancies. Are they? Government, public? Yeah, government is. Yeah. But what are we talking about? 5% of the workforce, if that? What percentage of employees work for the government? Is it 2%, 5%? It's not more than 5%, I don't think, across the board in every country. Why would publicly traded companies be forced to post all jobs? Wrong. They're not. Why would they be? Thanks for a response and kind words, Bill. You're absolutely welcome, Jay. I wish you the best. TTC, and during the hearing set up an investigation included blah, blah, blah. I don't care about hearings and investigations. Inappropriate behavior from a company. Look, I don't know. I mean, if there's a lot of bad employers. There's a lot of bad companies out there. It wouldn't amaze me to hear that one of them is acting inappropriately and breaking the law. That doesn't surprise me. There's a lot of morons out there, and I think in general government should be tougher on them. Pure Heart Ukulele Club. Never apply for any job that takes longer than 5 minutes to apply. Okay, well, if you take that advice, you're pretty much eliminating yourself from a lot of posted jobs. It's actually going in the opposite direction, right? What do you do? Here's a question for you. Let's pretend you were a recruiter, okay? I know, it's icky, but pretend you're a recruiter. Now, you post a job, you get 1,000 applicants, right? A lot of them, like there's some good ones in there, but a lot of them, they don't even have the basic requirements that you said were necessary, right? So how do you handle that? Well, number one, you employ all kinds of filters, like ATS software with AI, right? But wouldn't it be great if you could determine at source which applicants were actually serious and which were like, they don't really care, but it's so easy to apply for jobs, so why not, Wouldn't it be great if you could determine that so that when the applications arrived in your inbox, you knew that this person was serious? They were committed to this job. Wouldn't that be great? Well, they have that. And that's the reason why you see them lengthening the online process to apply for jobs. They'll give you all kinds of stupid questionnaires, and they'll make you fill in 1,000 fields with stuff that's already on your resume. They'll ask you some retarded personality type questions and make you jump through all kinds of hoops. And what we're seeing is there's the reasoning behind this is that they are operating on this theory that only the applicants who really want this job will put up with that process and make it to the end of the process. Right? Now, what's maddening about this is that not every company is following that, but quite a few are. So if you see these suspiciously long and convoluted processes to apply for the job, that's probably what's going on. Okay, so all I'm saying is that Pure Heart Ukulele Club, I'm not saying your advice is bad, but I'm saying that, if you were to follow that, it would preclude you from all those jobs. And the only jobs you'd be applying for were the ones where you're going in with 1,000 others, maybe. I don't know, but it could be limiting. It's up to you. But that's the risk. Personally, I would recommend people do networking before they apply for any posted jobs, to be honest with you. Or if you see a posted job, do a couple of things that modifies how you apply for it. First of all, don't apply to it on a job aggregator board like Indeed. Like, Indeed is an aggregator. That means it doesn't, there's some jobs that are posted natively on Indeed, but generally the way Indeed works is it crawls the web, it finds jobs in other places, and then lists them all on its site. So you go to Indeed and it's displaying all the jobs that it found. Most of them are not on Indeed. They're on company websites and other third-party websites, right? So if you see a job, what I would do is I would not apply to it via Indeed. If it's a job for, say, General Electric or, some company, I would go to the General Electric website and then apply for the job through General Electric's website. That's how I would do that, right? Okay, that's the first thing. Then, if you're aware of the job, what I would do personally is I would make the attempt to reach out to not the recruiter, but the hiring manager. Okay, see if you can find the hiring manager or a hiring manager at GE in a similar department and reach out to them and just say something along the lines of, I noticed you guys have posted the job, and then ask them stuff about the job. Is this connected with, are you guys expanding in this area, or, are you taking on new business, or are you gearing up to add new technology, or, I don't know, I would try and, shoot for starting a conversation in some area like that. Then at the end of that conversation, if you can get it, then I would say like, so do you think it makes sense for me to apply for this job? And hopefully they would say yes. And then you say, okay, so I'll apply based on the fact that you just told me to, right? And do it that way. So you're going in, but you already have a personal relationship with the hiring manager, and this kind of thing. Like I would look at stuff like that before I just went in with 1,000 people, unless you feel you can go head to head with 1,000 people and win, then sure. Okay, I'm going to wrap up these questions and comments, and then I have to get rolling. So let's see here. Okay, Bob says, whenever someone from HR refers to the company as a family, I throw up a little. Yeah, I don't blame you. It is off-putting. It's because I think it's off-putting because they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes. We know it's not a family. We know that they don't regard you like that or anyone like that. Everyone is replaceable. That's just how it is. Now, if you're trying to convince me that that's not the case, I'm insulted, and I'm also now a bit wary of you, because you're lying to me, and I don't appreciate that. So it's off-putting on it for a couple of reasons. Jay says, lately I've started messaging the recruiter on LinkedIn directly after applying. I've seen more success, at least getting my resume. Yeah, generally that will help you more. Yes. I mean, I would not, once again, my general advice is not to go through the recruiter. My general advice would be to contact the hiring manager. 2 different people, right? But it depends on your situation. Ukulele Club says, dude, United Healthcare is a story this week. Okay, great. I don't care. I don't even know what that is. I guess that's an American thing. Bob says, you guys get igloos? Fancy. Oh, I know. Yeah. It's the lap of luxury, too. Jay Bink says, whenever someone reveals that they are Canadian, I have the same reaction as when I find out someone is left-handed. That's okay. I have the same reaction about people like you two. Kind of a point and laugh kind of thing, but it's fine. It's all in good fun. And then you get drunk together, Bob says, Vasco says, how do you deal with a group of managers when someone said something bad about me and they don't want me in the company and don't even bother to listen to my version, even ask me why I didn't leave? Well, it depends how violent you are. Okay, now if they're all standing together, you might be able to take them out at once. Or if they're spread out, you might need something like a bat. It helps if you write their name on the side of the bat and they can see the bat with their name on it as you come towards them, right? It's your problem solver, right? Listen, Vasco, you can't control people. You have no control over other people. If people are morons and jackasses and they judge you for something you didn't do, or you know what I mean? Or they just hold a negative opinion about you that's just unjustified, or at least according to you, it's unjustified. You have no control over that. The thing is, you got to pick your battles. Now, some people are very belligerent and they'll want to fight and they'll want to break these people and right the wrong and force them to accept you and force them to endure you, or whatever the situation is. You want to stay employed there and these people are trying to get rid of you or something, right? Other people, you might decide, you know what? You guys are jerks. What you place value on is just so out to lunch, and I don't see myself succeeding according to those rules, if that's how it works here. So I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to leave and go somewhere else where they do appreciate me and they won't get in my way. And, they can recognize the fact that I'm doing a good job and blah, blah, blah. Right? So it depends what personality you have. Some people will want to fight that battle and right the wrong and you force them to bend to you. Others will just say, look, you guys are a bunch of jerks. I wish you well, but I'm going where, I have a chance of being appreciated and I can prosper. And they will promote me and they will recognize me for the value that I provide, right? Now, I don't know which type of person you are. I am more of the latter. It's not worth my time to try and engage, and try and make you see sense. I don't care about you. If you're deluded into thinking that, someone like me can't add value or something, best of luck. But I'm going to go over here where they will have promoted me by now, whereas you guys wouldn't have. That's better for me, better for them, and maybe we'll put you out of business. Don't take criticism from anyone you would not take advice from. Okay, that's one way to look at it. I don't think people really take criticism in general, even from, do you take criticism from your parents? Oh yeah, you'll listen to it, but do you stop and think, wow, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I've got it all wrong. Maybe I am ungrateful, or what, what I mean? I think that very, very few people actually truly take criticism, in the sense that they actually consider it and try to understand how it applies or how they could have got something wrong. Sadly a fighter, but at the same time tired of them, but I don't want to leave. Yeah, that's the thing. It's costly to leave, isn't it? Listen, I don't think there's as far as I know, there isn't a perfect solution where everything is perfect for you and there's no cost. But the best practical solution I know is to do a couple of things. Number one, if you truly feel that the best thing for you would be to leave, okay, I would think very deeply about the situation, very dispassionately. Maybe take some time to think about this and decide, do you want to stay or do you want to leave? Does it make sense to stay or does it make sense to leave? And if it makes sense to leave, okay, then stay while you line something up, okay? And if it helps make it easier, maybe it's very stressful to stay while you're finding another opportunity, disengage. Hey, you've checked out mentally. You really don't care, you know what I mean, about your day-to-day stuff and the opinion of your manager. You just don't care because you're out of here. You've mentally already left, right? Now, I know that's easier said than done, okay? We're all human and it can be very hard. We don't have control over our feelings, so we still feel stress and stuff. But as much as possible, just tell yourself that while you're lining something up. Put your energy and effort into lining something up, not doing your day-to-day work at this company. And then as soon as something, promising comes along, you're out the door, right? And, that's the best thing for you. You gotta look out for yourself, especially if these people are not treating you in a decent way. Okay. I got to get rolling, guys. Thanks for being here. You guys are awesome. I see there's 20 people here. I wish you nothing but the best. Have a great weekend. The holidays right around this time of year are, despite what you might have heard, they can be a good time to apply and to look for employment opportunities. People are retiring. People are, a lot of job seekers are sort of winding down their job efforts at this time of year. So that clears the way for, you with less competition. People are more amenable to doing informational interviews and things like this. People are retiring and they're going to be gone in the new year, so they're looking for people now to replace them. There's all kinds of opportunities. I wish you nothing but the best. I will be back next week. On Monday, I'm doing a couple of live streams, so come back. And if you're got any questions or you're struggling with something, you just want to talk it out, I'll be here. So I will see you then. Take care, everyone.